Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I am Tandazile Mamba, and today I am here with an amazing woman who has a plethora of experience. She has served as the director of Mayor's Scholars Program in Baltimore City Community College. She has served as well as the senior vice president for academic innovation and also worked as Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, Associate Professor for Political Science and International Studies. And today, she is the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Dean of Faculty here at Wartburg College. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Deborah Johnson Ross. Welcome, Dr. DJR.
Thank you, Leaves.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. And I know you've been excited and looking forward to this day.
Sort of.
Sort of. I know my questions may have been something else, but I look forward to engaging with you today because I believe this will be a very fruitful conversation. So, I understand that you are very passionate about engaging with young people and driving change. You are all about rethinking and reimagining the way people interact with each other and how we respect humanity. What is one thing that comes into your mind when you see a young person, a student, or a workmate?
I think the first thing that typically pops into my head is curiosity. I like to get to know who people are and understand something about their background. And I know some of the questions that I typically ask people can sound very trite. Because when I meet a student, I ask them their name, I ask where they're from, I ask what their major is, those kinds of things. But that's sort of the foundation for getting to know someone in this environment, because with students, I need to understand who they are and what their goals are so I can think about whether or not we're providing the right curriculum for them, that kind of thing. So I know those questions sometimes are irritating to students because those are questions that everybody here asks.
Yes.
But that's what those of us who are charged with supporting students, those are the things we need to know so that we can do our jobs better.
So, from your educational background and all the amazing work that you have done, our conversation today will be centered around looking at where we stand today and where we are coming from as people. We'll look at the way society is structured, and we will try to wrestle with ideas that we carry today. So my first question for you is based on this book I read. It's called Integrated, How America Schools Failed Black Children. It's written by the author Noliwe. She accounts a moment when her child tried to remove her skin just so she could reveal the white skin underneath, which would allow her to receive better treatment. From your experience, how has society changed for people of color in the United States?
That's a huge question. And the answer is, I'm not sure it's changed as much as people would want to think it has changed. So, for instance, that story, her name is Noliwe Rooks. That story makes me very sad, right? Because it's not so long ago. And even in my son's experience, it made me sad that he was having experiences that were similar to those that I had as a student. And so I think that on the one hand, we have, with regard to sort of the legal structure of the country, things have changed so that laws, policies, procedures are more equitable
Yes.
than they have been in the past, but the application of those laws, policies, and procedures still leaves much for us to do in terms of how those things are applied to people. And because there's so many things that are specific to location, and if we take Waverly here as an example, the traffic laws are the same for everyone who is driving here.
Yeah.
But how those laws get applied can be very different depending on the person who is driving. So that's where I still think we have a lot of work to do. But I also think that the progress we've made is evident in awareness of inequities and the actual legal structure.
Okay. So is it a question of what I understand is on paper there is so much progress that has been done, and it seems there has been an excellent work that has been done, but with regards to the people or we as individuals, there is a lot that needs to be done. So is it a question of mindset change or cultural shift or both?
It's both. You can't legislate someone's heart, right? You can't so you can have a piece of legislation or a law that says this is how we're going to do this thing, but I can't legislate how you actually feel about it. So when you're the person who has the power or ability to make a specific decision, you still have the autonomy or ability to do something that maybe does not align with the spirit of that law.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So that means that at some point we might need laws that say, thou shalt not feel this way or something.
I wish it were that easy.
Yeah. So what is one or two things that still concern you about the younger generation in reclaiming and defining their identity, understanding that it has been years of resisting and trying to create a new story of Black and people of color here?
That's a big question. So I think a couple of things. Depending on someone's experience, I don't know that there are enough young people who actually recognize their agency or that they are actually empowered to make change. And I think there are a lot of young people who accept the status quo. They just accept things and they think they don't have power to change. And I don't think that that particular feeling necessarily has anything to do with identity. I think that there are a lot of young people who feel that way regardless of their identity.
Yep.
On the flip side, I also think there are young people who want to make change, but I don't know that the elders have actually given them the tools to be able to affect that change. So one of the things that gives me hope, though, is I just read an article, and now I can't remember where it is, but a young man who is maybe 24 who's running for a political office. Like, that gives me hope. He's young, but he recognizes that he may be able to affect change if he runs for this office.
Yes.
So that gives me hope.
That makes sense. And I feel your point resounds with sort of the community here at school. I feel like I upload how we can basically relate as people from different spaces, it is easy for us to now communicate, and you realize that people are more open to learning about others. It's just that probably we need more spaces where we get into deeper conversations.
That is really true, because when you're in school, one thing is we truly are more alike than we are different. But I think when you are a student in particular, it's not always easy to see that and to understand that, because people are involved in so many activities and their lives get in a lane, and it's very hard for them to get out of that lane. And I also think at the same time, there's some people who aren't open to getting out of that lane. So I do worry about our students, for instance, who remain sort of sidelined in a class. They may be assigned to a group. The other members of the group don't think they need to interact or give respect to the views of one person in the group. How do we open those students up to the fact that everyone's experience should be recognized in those conversations? So that's something I worry about. I don't know how to help the faculty and staff help students, right? Like, what kind of training or preparation do we need to help students change their mindset, to your question?
To be better able to interact with each other.
Yes.
I think it also goes to the idea of being from a different place where you were surrounded by certain type of people, and then when you come into a space where there's like someone different, it's easier if you still have that group which has been home to you.
Yes.
To just mingle with them.
Yes.
Moving on to our next question, I think one cannot help but have to consider how in the midst of the civil rights movement, Africa was also going through the battle for independence. In particular to that story, I would like to zoom into Nelson Mandela's approach for resolving the apartheid. So the whole idea of being apart. His discourse that changed the story in court was his speech saying he is ready to die for this ideal space where neither black nor white is dominant. And I know there's a lot to be said about that, but right now, what are your thoughts in the idea of competing for power based on skin color?
Okay, I need to make sure that I'm understanding what you're asking. So when we talk about Mandela and his idea that the ideal is that we're all treated as human beings, simply because of the fact that you are a human being, you are due a certain kind of respect and access to human rights.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I am not sure. I think that skin color is one of the things that people use as a cue. If we think about human beings in competition for power, skin color and gender are things that are theoretically easily identifiable, and people can use them as a cue for whether or not, use them as a cue for how they are going to treat that other person. And what Nelson Mandela is arguing is that those things should not matter. You should be treating the other person with respect simply by the fact that you see they are a human being.
Yes.
Okay, that is the standard that I think that many people will say they seek. But it's really hard because we live in a world of limited resources. We live in a world where water is increasingly limited.
Yeah.
Our source of power, uh, I'm saying power, energy.
Yes.
I mean energy. The source of energy is increasingly limited. How food is distributed is difficult. So if you are someone whose goal is power, then you are going to use whatever method of differentiation you can to ensure that you remain in power and other people, you don't actually care whether they have access to resources or rights. Human rights become, I'm not making this easy, am I?
Yeah.
But human rights are no longer important if your goal is power.
Yeah.
And so that is why Mandela's idea, while inspirational and aspirational, is really difficult to achieve.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to stop because it's complicated.
I understand that.
Yes. And so I think, for instance, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is really clear. I love this document and I actually refer to it fairly often. But I think that most people don't know anything about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah.
They've never seen that document. So understanding that basic human needs, food, clothing, shelter, access to education, access to medical care, these are fundamental rights. And the struggle for power causes us to say, you don't have access to those rights. I have access to those rights, but I'm not actually concerned about whether or not you have access to those rights. And this is the fundamental struggle that we see going on today, actually internationally. You see this struggle in the United States. You see this struggle in Germany. You see this struggle in many countries today. Okay, I'm going to stop so you can get to all of your questions.
And I think I pretty much understand, and I feel like it comes in different forms and shapes, because even if it's not about your color, sometimes it changes towards, are you from a closer ethnic group, or do I love you as a person, or something like that. And it's easier to have something on paper and say this is what I say, but just leave something that's incongruent with that.
That incongruent is a really great word, right? Because what I can say, this is what I believe, but am I really living that?
Yes. So then, from your take, what's one hypothesis that you'd say would help create, or let me not use hypothesis, but what would you say would help create a space where there is a good social hierarchy, all things being equal, there is equity and there is harmonious living? So this is an answer that speaks to the person who has been in the other group. So how do they get empowered that now they have access to all these things? How do they fight all these things that tend to be setbacks in your mind? Seeing yourself from the lenses of being, I've been undermined for all this time.
Okay, you have to edit this out. Me laughing. No, you know what, Leaves? That's a great question. I'm not sure that I have an answer.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I have an answer for how I've lived my life and the choices that I have made and strategies that I think people can take. But I think the answer for an entire society, it takes generations for a culture to shift and change. And so I think that some of the efforts that we see on the part of many people today will, with their children or their grandchildren, change the society.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, education is a huge one. And education is a right. It's also a responsibility.
Yes.
Education is what exposes us to information and other perspectives and ways of thinking and being that allow us to become empowered. So education is my first response. And then I think what happens after that is that people become interested in particular topics or areas that align with them. So people who are advocating for health care, people who are advocating for what would I call it? Basic rights for people regardless of their sexual orientation or identity. So whatever issue aligns most closely with someone's heart, and they work on that issue, and then as all of those people come together, they ultimately change the society.
Yes. I love that point, and I think it's one good topic that I'm hoping to have at some point, the idea of being educated compared to just instructed. Because,
yes,
yeah, I feel sometimes we just get to class, get instructed, we pass the exams, and no change gets to be seen in that case.
So that's a really interesting point, because education starts with the instructed part, but then you have to learn how to apply that to something. So it's the idea of from theory to practice, because you have to be instructed in the basics. If you're a chemist, you need to understand how these molecules interact, how these chemicals interact, because if you don't get that basic instruction, you will blow up our science building, right?
Right.
So you have to get the fundamentals. And once you get the fundamentals, you learn how to apply those to the real world around you.
Yes.
So, and education is that entire process. So you're right. The basic instruction leaves something to be desired.
Right.
You get the fundamentals, then what do you do with that knowledge?
Yes. So it's upon one's shoulders to desire to become something from that instruction.
Yes.
For education to be a holistic and complete thing.
Yes. And it's multi-layered, because the person has to have the desire to do something with the information. Sometimes they don't have that desire. So if we're talking about students and they're taking a class that is required, they just want to take the required class and check it off. In the best circumstances, something in that required class triggers an interest or triggers curiosity, and then they think, oh, maybe this class isn't so bad. Maybe I need to read that article again.
Some more.
Right? So from the perspective of a teacher at heart, that is the best outcome of a class where the student initially really doesn't want to be there, and you are the person who really sparks a fire in that student.
Yes. This conversation is going really deep. In the interest of time, I know we have a lot more to still go on and talk about. I will skip some of the questions that we had prepared.
Okay.
I will now jump to this question we have of thinking about progress that we have made in promoting equality and equity. What challenges are being posed by neocolonialism in our contemporary society?
Oh, wow. So many. Because the idea of neocolonialism, for someone who doesn't know what that term means, it's really the legacy of colonization. And I think there's so many ways in which this legacy impacts current society that people are not aware of. And so the one that I think I see most clearly is what I will call colonization of the mind. And it's this idea that both some of the people that I go back to when I think about the theories that I learned when I was a student, so Frantz Fanon, Amy Césaire, the idea of colonization of the mind really means that those who are oppressed take on the goals of the oppressor.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't necessarily recognize that they are doing that. So a good example is when one oppressed group or one underrepresented group of people cannot see that it is in their interest to align with another group that is similarly situated. So if we use the United States as an example, if you look at, we use this common term, people of color, but people of color covers a lot of people. So in some regions of the country, you will have African Americans working together with Asian Americans or Latino Americans to working together to affect change around, let's use housing as an example. And they may work together, and that's great. But in another region, those groups will see one another as competitors, and they won't work together and help each other.
Oh, yeah.
Not being able to work together is a vestige of colonization because it was sort of separating people and pitting them against one another. They're pitted against one another based on their interests, not recognizing that all of them have a shared interest in working against the oppressor. So the oppressor lets you fight it out over here, and they just sit back and watch you fight it out while they're still sitting pretty. Exactly. And so I think when we talk about neocolonialism, that you see that manifested in different ways in many different countries, but you can clearly see the manifestation of neocolonialism. It's just that that's a theoretical concept, and people are not necessarily aware that that is what they are doing.
I like how you explain the colonization of the mind, because looking at it, I'm beginning to realize how this also shows in how there has been the social hierarchy, that the man is above the woman. And what is being talked about today is how we can fight each other. So I feel like it's really something that should be dealt with from that perspective of dealing with the mind.
Yes, it's a whole separate conversation. But women, I don't know that I should say this, but women are the strongest force in preserving patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because they also have the ability to shift patriarchy by how they raise their children, right? And many of them don't. They baby their sons. I'm going to call it babying. They baby their sons, and their girls. They teach them how to cook. They teach them how to clean. They teach them how to do all of these things in service to the sons. So the sons,
baby son.
yes, and the sons never learn how to cook, never learn how to clean, and they expect a woman to take care of them. This is the way that patriarchy gets continued. Thank goodness my son knows how to cook and he knows how to clean. And there's no choice because he has no sisters, and I can't do all of those things for him. I'm the mom. No. You need to help take care of me.
Yes.
Anyway.
As we wrap up this conversation with the idea of Ubuntu humanity, how does history prove that Ubuntu is not just a term or idea that can be associated with being united, but rather it is something that is real when we recognize and acknowledge each other, society changes. What is your take on that idea?
So I think it's a very powerful idea that I can only exist successfully if you are also successful. Yeah. And it is a shared communal responsibility. And I think we do see that. What happens, though, is it's not the prevailing idea, but we see it in pockets, and particularly in African societies that are very communal, where people make sure that their neighbor is cared for. They make sure that their extended family is cared for. I think that's where you see it articulated and carried out. I also think you see it here. Yeah. And I think a really good example is when we look at, because of where we are at Wartburg College, and you look at our foundational documents, there's a document called Rooted and Open that was written collaboratively with all of the colleges and universities that are a part of the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. That document, if you read it, is very similar to the idea of Ubuntu. And it uses these terms that have to do with caring for the neighbor so that all may flourish.
All right.
And that is a very similar idea to Ubuntu. Yes. So I love that idea, and I think that it can prevail. And this is what I will say. I think that those of us who are concerned about those kinds of ideas, if we have to believe that these ideas can prevail, otherwise we might become depressed. And not
just by worrying about what is not happening, right?
Exactly. Yes. But I think if we live that out in our lives, we can often impact others without even recognizing it, because you're modeling that belief and that behavior for others, and that can help change a little by little.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. DJR. This was very informative, and we are getting to the last part of our session. This is the most interesting part, the popcorn session. So this will be very quick questions. You can pass on some of them if you don't want to answer them. So it will go by, as popcorn does, it starts by a little pop and then just gets so very quick.
Okay.
So is it music or any TV broadcast media?
Oh, which one I like the most?
Yes.
Music,
Tea or coffee?
coffee,
Okay. Bread or muffin?
bread.
Cheese or bacon?
Oh, that's hard. Am I allowed to say cheese and bacon?
It's an or.
Cheese if I have to pick.
Okay. So would you rather have your nose grow every time you lie or have your color change every time you lie?
Oh, wow. Color. I need my nose to stay small.
What's one thing you mostly got into trouble for as a child?
Oh, talking too much.
What about now?
Talking
Still?
too much.
What's your greatest childhood memory?
Oh, I have so many. I was really blessed with a wonderful childhood. I think one of the things that I remember thinking was really fun, I was very little, probably 4 or 5 years old. My grandfather had a farm that was outside of town. And when we visited, he would get us up in the morning, and we wouldn't even get dressed yet. We would have on pajamas and a robe. We would be wrapped up in a robe, and we would have on fuzzy slippers, as kids. And he would let us ride in the back of his pickup truck and take us with him to, I don't know the politically correct term, slop the hogs, feed his hogs. And we would ride in the back, and the air would blow, and it was very carefree and beautiful.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
And that memory was one of the last I had of my grandfather, because we moved away, and he passed away before we moved back.
All right.
But I just remember thinking that was like really fun as a kid, and watching the hogs root around and eat, and
That must have been very interesting.
Yes.
Well, that was a way to end our show today. Thank you so much, Dr. DJR. Thank you for these insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Leaves.